Welcome to Lento English. Ready to level up your English? Here we learn through stories, slow, clear, and fun. Listen, relax, and enjoy the journey.
One introduction. Imagine you could travel back in time. Imagine you go to ancient Egypt thousands of years ago. Think about your life today. You have a safe home, clean water to drink, and plenty of food. You can go to a doctor or a hospital when you are sick. You have many things that make life comfortable and easy. Now forget all these things. Ancient Egypt was a very different world. Life was not easy. It was hard and often dangerous. For a person from today, living there would be very, very difficult. Maybe it would be impossible to survive for a long time. Why would it be so hard? Many reasons. People in ancient Egypt did not have modern medicine. They did not have clean water from a tap. They did not have supermarkets with lots of food. Their homes were not like ours. Their daily work was different. Many dangers were around them every day. Think about sleeping in a simple house made of mud bricks. There might be dangerous animals outside or even inside. Think about getting water from the river, the same river where people washed clothes and animals drank. Think about eating the same few types of food every day. Think about working from morning until night with your hands without machines. Life in ancient Egypt was a constant fight to stay alive. There were many problems that we do not have today. Sickness was common and could kill people quickly. Getting enough food was not always easy. The world was full of dangers from nature and from other people. This book will look at these problems. We will explore why a person from our time would find it almost impossible to live in ancient Egypt. We will see the big differences in daily life, health, food, work, and safety. Get ready to understand the real challenges of this old world, far from the comfort of today. 2. No safe home. Life in ancient Egypt started hard. Being born was dangerous. Many babies did not live long. Maybe between 1/5 and 1/2 of babies died. This was because there were no good doctors like today, no special machines to help sick babies. If you were born, you had to be strong from day one. If a baby survived, childhood was not easy either. Kids worked hard. There was no school like we know. Children had to help their families. They did chores around the home. They helped care for younger brothers and sisters. Boys might learn their father's job, like farming. Girls helped their mothers. They learned how to manage a home. It was a life of work and responsibility, not just playing. They had to help the family survive. Ancient Egypt had a very clear social structure. Like a pyramid, at the top was the pharaoh. He was the most powerful person. He was like a king and also important in their religion. Below the pharaoh were important people like priests and advisors. Then there was a middle class of skilled workers and people who could read and write. Most people were farmers. They were the lower class. At the very bottom were slaves. Slaves often came from other countries. If you arrived in ancient Egypt from modern times, where would you fit? You would not know their language well. You would not know their customs. Your clothes and appearance would be strange. People might be afraid of you or not trust you. It is very likely you would be seen as an outsider. It is possible you could be captured because you look so different. If you were captured, you could become a slave. This was common for foreigners. Even if you were not a slave, fitting in would be very hard. You would need to find work. Most jobs needed physical strength, like farming or building. Without knowing the language or having skills they needed, manual labor would be your only option. The way people lived, ate, and thought was totally different. Simple things like finding a place to live or getting food would be difficult without understanding their world. You would have to learn everything from the beginning, but without help. Living among people with different rules and expectations would be a constant challenge. There was no safe place that felt like home. 3. Daily work. Life in ancient Egypt meant hard work every day. For most people, the main job was farming. More than 90% of everyone worked on the land. The Nile River was the most important thing for farmers. It brought water to the fields. Without the Nile, nothing could grow. The work was very physical. There were no modern machines. People used simple tools like sickles to cut plants and hoes to work the ground. They worked from morning until night under the hot sun. It needed a lot of strength and energy. Daily tasks were tiring. Farmers grew crops like wheat and barley. This was their food. Often people were paid for their work with food like bread, not money. They worked hard for months to grow enough food for themselves and for others. Sometimes the Nile River would flood the land. When the river was flooded, farmers could not work in the fields. During this time, people had to help with other big jobs. They worked on large building projects for the pharaoh. This could mean helping to build temples or even pyramids. It was heavy work, moving large stones and materials. So, whether it was farming or building, daily life was full of hard manual labor. There was little time for rest. People needed to be strong and work constantly just to survive. This was the reality of living and working in ancient Egypt. 4. Food and water. In ancient Egypt, getting enough food and clean water was a daily challenge. The main food for most people was simple. They ate a lot of bread. This bread was often made from barley or wheat. Vegetables were also important. People ate things like onions, garlic, lentils, and beans. Sometimes they had fruit like figs or dates. If a family was lucky, they might catch fish from the Nile River. Meat was not common for poor people. It was expensive and only eaten sometimes, perhaps on special days. The food was very basic. There was not much variety. Eating the same things every day could mean people did not get all the different foods their bodies needed to be strong and healthy. Meals were often simple, maybe just bread and vegetables. Sometimes the food was not very clean. Sand could get into the bread because of how it was made and cooked. People ate their food on the ground or from simple bowls. Drinking water came mostly from the Nile River. The Nile was the center of life, but its water was not always safe to drink. People used the river for many things. They washed clothes in it. They also put their waste near the river. So the water often had dirt and bad things in it. Drinking this water could make people very sick. There were tiny things in the water like small worms that you could not see. These worms could get into people's bodies when they drank the water. One sickness from these worms caused fever and bad stomach problems. There were no good doctors or medicines like we have today. If you got sick from the water, it was very hard to get better. Storing food was also difficult. There were no refrigerators. Food could go bad quickly, especially in the hot weather. This meant people had to eat food soon after they got it or dried it to keep it longer. But even dried food could get dirty or eaten by insects or animals. So getting food and water was not just about finding it. It was also about trying to keep it safe and clean enough to eat and drink without getting ill. This was a constant worry for everyone. 5. Illness and death. Living in ancient Egypt meant sickness was a big part of life. Many people got sick often. There were many dangerous diseases that are not common today in many places. For example, malaria was a big problem. It came from mosquitoes and caused fever and made people very weak. Another bad sickness was schistosomiasis. This came from tiny worms in the water, especially the Nile River. These worms could enter your body when you were in the water. They caused fever and pain inside. Tuberculosis was also a common disease. It affected people's lungs and made them cough a lot. Smallpox was another terrible sickness that spread easily. It caused a high fever and spots on the skin and often led to death. People got sick so easily because life was very different. There was no clean water like we have now. The water from the river was used for many things, and it often had things in it that caused sickness. People did not have good ways to keep clean. Simple hygiene practices that we use every day, like washing hands properly or having clean toilets, were not common or understood. People lived close together, often in small houses with many family members. This made it easy for sicknesses to pass from one person to another, especially when people coughed or were dirty. They did not understand how diseases spread through tiny things you cannot see. There were no modern hospitals or doctors with the knowledge we have today. They did not know that tiny germs caused diseases. They had some ways to try and help sick people, using plants or other natural things as remedies. But these old remedies were not very effective against serious diseases. If you got a bad sickness, it was very hard to get better. There were no strong medicines like antibiotics to fight infections. Even a small cut or injury could become very dangerous. Without good care, an infection could spread through the body and cause death. So getting sick or hurt was a major threat. Death from illness happened very often. It was a constant fear for everyone living in ancient Egypt. Many people did not live for many years because of the danger of sickness. Life was much shorter for most people compared to today. You had to be very lucky to stay healthy. Even simple sicknesses that we can cure easily today could be deadly then. There was no easy way to protect yourself from many of these dangers. Sickness was always close by, in the air, the water, and among the people. It was a world where illness was a normal part of life, but one that often brought death. 6. Dangerous animals. Life in ancient Egypt was hard. It was not just the work or the food. There were also many dangerous animals. These animals lived near people, in the river, in the fields, and sometimes even in homes. The Nile River was very important. People used it for water and travel. But the Nile was also home to large, dangerous creatures, crocodiles. These big reptiles were a constant threat. If you went near the water, you had to be very careful. Crocodiles could attack quickly. Swimming or washing clothes in the river was risky. Crossing the river could also be dangerous if a crocodile was near. Away from the river, on the land, other dangers waited. Snakes were common in ancient Egypt. Many snakes were venomous. This means their bite could be deadly. The snakes could hide in the fields where people worked. They could also enter houses looking for food or warmth. Stepping on a snake or finding one inside was a serious problem. Scorpions were another threat. These small creatures have a painful sting. Their sting can make you very sick, and sometimes it could kill a person, especially children or old people. Scorpions also hid in houses, under rocks, or in cracks in the ground. You had to watch where you put your hands and feet. Ancient Egyptians did not have good ways to protect themselves from these animals. There were no fences to keep crocodiles away from the riverbanks. There was no medicine to stop the poison from a snake or scorpion bite. If an animal attacked you, there was little help available. People just had to be careful and hope they were lucky. The danger from animals was not something that happened sometimes. It was a daily part of life. Every time you worked in the fields, went to the river, or even walked inside your simple home, there was a chance of meeting a dangerous animal. This constant risk made life even more difficult and uncertain in ancient Egypt. 7. War and conflict. You are in ancient Egypt now. Life is hard every day. There are many dangers. One danger is war. If you are a man, the pharaoh might need you to be a soldier. This means you must fight for Egypt. It is not a choice you can make. You might be forced to join the army. Ancient Egyptian soldiers fought battles to protect their land or take new land for the pharaoh. They fought to expand the empire. They did not have modern guns or tanks. They used simple weapons made of wood, stone, and copper or bronze. Soldiers carried a shield, often made of wood covered with animal skin, to stop hits from enemies. They had swords like the curved sword called a khopesh. This sword was sharp and good for cutting in close fights. They also used spears and javelins. These were long sticks with sharp points. You could throw a javelin from a distance or use a spear to stab people who were close to you. For fighting people far away, soldiers used bows and arrows. An archer needed to be skilled to hit a target with an arrow, especially when people were moving in battle. Going to war was very dangerous. There was no modern medicine on the battlefield. If you were hurt badly, for example, hit by a sword or spear, or shot by an arrow, you would likely die from the wound or infection. Soldiers did not wear heavy metal armor like knights in later times. They had little protection for their bodies, maybe a leather helmet or a padded vest. Battles were often fought outside in the sand or fields under the hot sun. Sometimes the enemies came from the sea, like groups called the Sea Peoples. They came in boats to attack Egypt and its people. Egyptian soldiers had to fight them near the coast or on land near the river, defending the borders. Being a soldier meant your life could be in danger any time there was a fight or a military campaign. You had to be strong and brave and follow orders, but this did not always save you from injury, capture, or death. War was a terrible part of life for many men in ancient Egypt. You could not choose to stay safe at home if the pharaoh called you to fight. Your life would be at risk on the battlefield, facing enemies with sharp weapons and no way to escape easily. This was another big challenge in ancient Egypt. Surviving a battle was not easy. Many soldiers did not return home to their families. They died far away fighting for the pharaoh and the empire. 8. Conclusion. We have seen many things about life in ancient Egypt. It was a world very different from ours today. We looked at how hard life was from the beginning, with many babies not living long. Growing up meant working early, not going to school like now. Society had strict levels, from the pharaoh at the top to people like farmers and workers lower down. A person from today would likely be very low in this society, maybe even a slave. This would be a big change from modern life. Daily work was very hard. Most people were farmers, working the land with simple tools. The Nile River was important for water, but it also brought dangers. Building big things like pyramids meant long, hard physical work for everyone. There were no machines to help. Life was a constant physical effort. The food was simple, mainly bread, beer, and vegetables. There was not much variety. Water from the Nile was often not clean because of waste. This made people sick easily. There were many common illnesses like malaria and tuberculosis. Without modern medicine, even small sicknesses could be very dangerous and often led to death. Hygiene was poor, and this helped diseases spread fast. Dangerous animals were also a daily threat. Crocodiles lived in the river, and snakes and scorpions were common near homes and in fields. There was no easy way to avoid these dangers or treat bites and attacks. The environment itself was full of risks. Sometimes people had to go to war. Fighting in ancient times was brutal and dangerous. Soldiers used simple weapons like swords and spears. There was no modern protection or medical help on the battlefield. The chance of getting hurt or killed was very high. Thinking about all these things, the hard start to life, the difficult work, the simple food and water, the many diseases with no medicine, the dangerous animals, and the risk of war, it becomes clear. For a person from our time, used to modern comforts, clean water, hospitals, and easy communication, living in ancient Egypt would be incredibly difficult. Survival would not be easy. It shows how much our world has changed, and how tough people in ancient times had to be to live each day.